Chris Alexander is Canada's former Minister of Immigration in the Conservative government of Stephen Harper. He has accused the Conservative leader Andrew Scheer of being factually incorrect on the consequences of the UN Global Compact on Migration. And Chris Alexander, as you can see, joins us from Toronto. Hello again, Mr. Alexander.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you again. What's wrong with how your party and the leader of your party, Andrew Scheer, have framed this issue?
Well, first of all, I support Andrew Scheer completely. I hope he's the next Prime Minister of Canada. I think he'll do a better job of managing immigration, refugee policy, and so forth than the current government. But the Global Compact on Migration, as I see it, is essentially an attempt, led by a Canadian, by the way, Louise Arbour, to bring to the world standards, experience, and legislation that we've had in the field of immigration for decades, that we've been refining and perfecting for decades, to the rest of the world, which doesn't have a very bright picture. And certainly doesn't have a very enlightening political discussion as polarization deepens in much of the world on these issues. So,
right. But what did Mr. Scheer get wrong in his framing of this? Well,
the main thing he got wrong is by calling on the government and implying that he himself wouldn't sign and wouldn't be wouldn't associate Canada with this compact. I think that's inconceivable because it reflects everything we did in government as Conservatives and as Canadians to take our immigration, refugee, and citizenship policies and programs to new heights. He also said, and here it was a CPAC tweet that brought this to my attention, right. Because I haven't been following this very closely, though I've supported it for months. He said that this compact would have legal status, would be driving changes in Canada's legal system, obliging us to change our legislation in various ways, and undermining our sovereignty. And that's simply not the case. It's a political declaration. Yes, it could be cited in court, but it wouldn't have legal force. It's take it or leave it. And as I say, Peter, these are standards that we have had in Canada and have been perfecting in Canada for decades. There's nothing to be afraid of here. What we should be welcoming is that the world and the United Nations are talking about these issues seriously for the first time. The UN, which has this unique responsibility for international peace and security and many other issues, has had a gap on migration for decades.
Okay, so do you think, I mean, I don't know if you've had a chance to talk to Mr. Scheer about your comments. Do you believe it's a deliberate attempt to misrepresent what this compact will mean for Canadian sovereignty, or he doesn't understand it?
No, I think he's had poor advice on this issue. There are many governments, including Conservative governments, in European countries, in Australia and the US, that are not associating themselves with this. Right. But there are Conservative governments in the United Kingdom and indeed Germany, where Angela Merkel has been the principal driver of the work behind this compact, that see further down the road, see the broader picture and see how important this is. I'd like us to be in the second group. The populists, the nationalists, the extreme right really have no place in Canada's debate on immigration because we've managed things well. We have a big middle and the ability to be moderate, be reasoned, be sensible on these issues. And the Global Compact on Migration is part of carrying those messages about moderation, about good sense, about experience that works to the world.
You're saying Conservatives in this country shouldn't be afraid of this compact at all. There's nothing wrong with it.
Absolutely not. In fact, we should be welcoming it because Europe, the United States, and other countries are in a pickle on this front because they didn't do enough and because the United Nations and other international organizations left these issues to one side for too long. The EU left them to one side for too long, disastrously, and it's time to play catch up. I think Angela Merkel understands that. Canadians understand that generally, and we as one of Canada's governing parties should be part of showing international leadership on migration, refugees, citizenship, and asylum policy.
There are suggestions in some quarters Mr. Scheer is perhaps playing up concerns about immigration to try and counter any loss of Conservative supporters to Maxime Bernier's new party. What do you think of that proposal?
Well, I think Maxime Bernier on these issues has lost his mind. He didn't say these things in the leadership campaign. He thinks that this is going to be popular with Canadians as a separate party. It's going nowhere. It's a mistake. It's disastrous for Conservatives when we're divided. he will get absolutely no support from me or from anyone else. And when he goes around saying, you know, diversity as our strength is a problem or is an ideology, he's really forgetting what this country is about. I'm sitting here right now in a city in which I was born and grew up, the city of Toronto, whose motto is diversity is our strength. And that doesn't mean we don't admire Canada's legal system, Canada's tradition of law and order, Canada's ability to integrate immigrants and to help everyone be successful here. But let's avoid these extreme statements that really misunderstand what Canada's about, where we've come from.
Okay. Sorry, let me jump in. Interesting you should say that, because let's talk. I mean, look, you've got some experience in this field as a former immigration minister. You went through the whole process of the barbaric cultural practices tip line, and I think you have said since that you think that may have cost you the election. It was the wrong program at the wrong time, and the way it was rolled out wasn't right. You've lamented your own department's response to the Syrian refugee crisis. You wished it could have moved more quickly at that time back in 2015. Get all that. What I want to get from you now is, having been through that part of the conversation, what do you think? What role do you think immigration, the kind of debate we're having now on migration, asylum seekers, is going to play as we ramp up to the next election? Are you happy about what you hear or concerned about what you hear?
I'm a bit concerned. I don't think it'll be central. I think economic issues are what matter most. Declining levels of business investment in Canada will catch up with us, are catching up with us. I was in Alberta last week, and the situation out there is really catastrophic. Not to mention Oshawa, not to mention the relative tax situations of Canada and the United States, which, as you know, have changed. But on the last election, yeah, I thought we played that issue really badly and shouldn't have made that announcement at the time we did, unless we were able to explain it and defend it properly, which we didn't do. But forced marriage, which is what we were talking about in that legislation, which was supported by the Liberal government, is still an issue. Indeed, it's one of the global goals, the Sustainable Development Goals that the whole world has embraced. I'd like us to see not politicize issues that are important. Asylum rights are important. Refugees are important. Gender equality is important. And ending forced marriage is part of that. You know, 3 years later, Peter, we should be able to talk about forced marriage and not talking points that came from the Liberal war room.
All right. Appreciate your perspective tonight. Chris Alexander, good to talk to you.
Thank you.